What up, Clashers? You're back with Mr. Berger. Dark Prince has been making a comeback since he was buffed in that last patch, and honestly, so has Graveyard and Splashyard. So why not put them both together? Tonight, we're going to be taking a look at a Dark Prince Splashyard deck. Now, this first replay is actually up against a very unconventional, it's, what is it, Giant Skeleton, Hog Rider, Prince, Freeze. He's got Rage in there too. It's really weird, but when you go up against these weird decks, since you're going up against combinations that you're not usually used to seeing, and maybe even cards that you're not used to seeing so much, like Giant Skeleton, although I'm personally familiar with him, maybe you aren't as much, maybe my viewers aren't as much, and even though I may be familiar with him since I don't play against him that much, I might slip up and make a few mistakes, and there's definitely a few places in this replay where I did that. For example, I allowed him to lightning like my Ice Wizard and my Tombstone and my Tower all at once because of bad placement. Just a few small things like that. You'll notice that I can really capitalize against this guy on the Tombstone and on the Graveyard, and at the very beginning there I actually use the Graveyard on defense, which is something that you don't see too often, but you do see from time to time for sure. And it's because he's got a lot of single target hitting units, if not completely single target hitting units. So I can really take advantage of all those skeletons. He doesn't have a whole lot of stuff to clear it out with the splash damage. He doesn't even have, like a poison or a fireball or anything like that, or zap. So because he's running, lightning and rage and kind of these unconventional spells. He does have freeze, but he doesn't use it too much against the skeletons. So I can really capitalize on that. And that's something that you want to keep in mind when you're going up against, Pekkas, when you're going up against princes, giant skeletons, mini Pekkas, single target heavy hitters, things like that. Those skeletons really come in handy. Now, of course, if you're going up against a Mega Knight Wizard deck or something like that, they're not going to come as in handy. They're not going to be as useful, is what I'm trying to say. And you could definitely come up with alternatives that would be better in that situation, but you have a lot of other things to lean on this deck, or in this deck, rather. Graveyard, I feel like it's been making a decent comeback. As I mentioned, Dark Prince has been really strong lately, but the Graveyard has really been, one of those cards that, I don't know, they don't tweak it too much. I mean, they have in the past, but not lately. But it really varies with the meta. So this Splashyard, or very similar Splashyard decks, not including the Dark Prince, were similar for a while. They're really popular for a bit. I played a few. I was having a lot of fun with them. In fact, there was the one with Bowler, and there was even like a Splash Bow variation of it, and it was pretty awesome. Like, it's a really fun archetype to play. But it kind of fell off the map a bit in, the last few patches. But I feel like as of lately, the Graveyard decks are really starting to shine, and you can just see the power of the Graveyard there, just wrecking that tower like nobody's business. And I got a little cocky using the flexing goblin emote. I just wanted to show off my new emote. He yawns at me knowing that he can counter me easily. Here's where I mess up with the Ice Wizard placement. I allow him to get a whole ton of Elixir advantage, or not necessarily advantage, but value there by getting the Tombstone, the Ice Wizard, and also finishing off my tower. But that was a mistake, that I'm looking back on and thinking, okay, maybe I can do better next time. So, as I mentioned, these decks are definitely making a decent comeback, and they're very much defensive control decks. You really want to capitalize on playing defense, on getting positive elixir trades with all that splash synergy, and then on going in for, deadly counter pushes. I know I say that in like all my videos. Deadly counter push, that should be my catchphrase. But I'm serious, guys. This is one of those decks where that's really important. You don't need to worry about spamming your Graveyard every time it's up. You can use it on defense if you need to. You can hang on to it until double Elixir, which I do in most of these replays, honestly. If I do use it before double Elixir, it's probably only once or twice, depending on the matchup. I mean, it's just, you want to really get the Elixir advantage, because if you fail the Graveyard, you send it in alone, or you send it in with the poison doesn't hit anything. That's 9 Elixir down the drain for nothing. And you have so much defensive potential with this deck. You can really take advantage of all the splash synergy that you have with like the Tornado, with the Dark Prince, with the Baby Dragon, with the Ice Wizard, with the Poison, with the Barbarian Barrel. I'm practically naming every card in this deck except, the Graveyard and the, the Tombstone. Basically, every other card in this deck has some sort of splash synergy. You can pull everything together with the Tornado and really just wipe out entire waves like nobody's business. If you have just like the Baby Dragon and the Ice Wizard down, or the Dark Prince charging in, and you Tornado everything together, I mean, pretty much any force will melt. Now, you don't have an Inferno Dragon, so you don't really have anything to heavily counter like Pekkas, but you do have the Tombstone. So as far as damage goes, then you won't be able to blow it up initially or immediately or very quickly, but you'll be able to kite it like crazy. You got the Tombstone, and you've also got the combo of the Ice Wizard and the Tornado, which is absolute beast, a monster. I was trying to decide which word to use. We'll use both because that's how crazy it is on defense. That Ice Wizard Tornado, plus you have the Tombstone to counter, heavy hitting single target units and to just pull things away from the tower and then kite them away further with the Tombstone. It's insane. There's so much defensive power in this deck. This will actually be a pretty decent example of going up against that single target hitting unit because I got the Pekka in my opponent's deck here. He's got some good defense. Kind of another unusual deck. He's running Princess and Hog and Freeze and Pekka, but it's a Pekka Control deck. And he's got the Tesla there as the defensive structure rather than like a cannon or a tornado or something like that. And again, this is just in classic challenges. So early on, you don't necessarily go up against too many super meta decks. But if you're playing this in grand challenges, you're probably going to be seeing a lot more, 2.6 and things like that. And I did lose to 2.6 with this deck. So don't get me wrong. If you do go up against some of those meta decks and somebody that knows how to use them, it might be a little bit more difficult. But either way, this is a meta deck. This is really strong. It's really current. And I definitely highly recommend it in pretty much any game mode. Well, not game mode, but, like ladder, classic challenges, grand challenges. It might not be so great in something like, I don't know, Ramp Up or Double Elixir. You might want to go for a big beatdown deck in that case. But honestly, now that I think about it, it'd probably be pretty decent there too. So let's get back on task here. So as I mentioned, it's very much a control deck. You take advantage of that defensive potential that you have, and you go in for the offensive counter push. Usually only when you're in Double Elixir, because when you're there, you can afford to send in a lot of things. You'll see me do things like cycle maybe Dark Prince in the back, and then I'll actually put like a Baby Dragon at the bridge or something, and then I'll put the Graveyard down and then Poison. But I mean, think about that. Dark Prince is 4, Baby Dragon's 4, that's 8 Elixir, Graveyard is 5. You know what I mean? You're already racking up the Elixir. You throw down the Poison, that's another 4. Like, that's a really heavy investment. But as you can see, it can absolutely melt towers. You can just destroy them so quickly. And that Graveyard really has potential to destroy units as well. If you've got like a Baby Dragon or a Dark Prince or even an Ice Wizard or a Barbarian from your Barbarian Barrel tanking the Princess Tower, if they put down like say an E-Wiz or something that can't attack the skeletons too fast and then splash them all out at once, man, those skeletons can actually melt that E-Wiz or that Musketeer or whatever it might be really quickly and really easily. And if you have the Poison down on top of it, then definitely, I mean, you can do some serious damage there. Now, you'll see me oftentimes use the Poison. Oh, I want to point this out before I go off track there. He fireballed. He missed his fireball. That was a mistake. I purposely poisoned here in an unusual spot just to kind of make it an even playing field. I never really thought about that too much, but I saw some people doing it on Reddit, and I'm like, that's kind of cool. You see your opponent make a mistake. You want to keep the game fair, right? You want to make it an even playing field. I mean, whatever. I don't care that much if I lose, right? So I go ahead and throw the Poison down there. So anyway, let's get back on task here. The Graveyard, it can take out the opponent's support units, but so can that Poison. And you really want to time the Poison. You want to think about using it. You'll almost always see me use it with the Graveyard, but it's a little bit more methodical than that. I don't just slap the Poison down every time that I throw a Graveyard. You got to think about placement, and you got to think about timing as well. Now this one is against a Dark Prince bait kind of deck with Rocket. And you'll see that my opponent starts Rocket cycling kind of early on, and he's trying to finish off that tower, and it can be a viable strategy. Oh, first of all, I loaded in a little bit late there, which is why I tornado late, but either way I activated the King Tower. So that Rocket cycle, it can be a decent strategy. It can be pretty good, but you're also investing 6 Elixir, and if you're not clipping anything with the Rocket as well, every time you use it, you're giving your opponent, or in this case me, essentially free Elixir, some sort of an Elixir advantage. You are chipping away at the tower, and he'll use it on things like just my Ice Wizard, which if he does it enough, yeah, he can win, but I was able to kind of pull it together and take advantage of that Elixir advantage and chip away at his tower. So let's get back onto what I was talking about with that Poison. So that Poison, if you just throw it down right where the Graveyard is, right, then your opponent's going to catch on. First of all, when they see Graveyard, if they're any good, they will expect either a Poison or a Freeze after that. It's almost always what you're going to have with Graveyard. You rarely see a Graveyard deck without either of those things in it. So they're probably, if they're any good again, going to try to put their unit somewhere where it's not going to be cleaved by that poison. So you've got a few options. You can A, wait to see where they put their unit, right? Wait to see, like, okay, he didn't put his musketeer or the princess or whatever right next to the tower. He put it behind his king tower. So see where he does that, and if it's not where it's going to clip the king tower as well, maybe it's just in the very top right corner or top left corner, then you can still clip it with the poison. You'll see things like my opponent will put a defensive structure like right where that Inferno Tower is, and then a unit in between the Inferno Tower and the Princess Tower, and then you've got range for that poison to hit all three things. And your graveyard might be around that Princess Tower, right? But your poison can still be used kind of off to the side where it's hitting the Princess Tower a little bit. As long as it's within range, it'll do all the damage. And it's also clipping whatever defensive structure and defensive unit that your opponent has. You can, hang tight, wait to see what they do, and then use the poison. If it's your first run-in, then you may actually just use it right away. You can graveyard and poison, especially in double elixir time. You can afford to do that a little bit more. But until then, you're kind of, what if they put the musketeer or the Ewiz or the princess or whatever it is further away, the poison isn't going to get any value? Or what if they just use like a knight or something, and or something that can completely shut it down but not take too much damage from the poison, not give you much value, and then they go in for a deadly counter push. But in double elixir, if you haven't graveyarded the whole time, and then you go in double elixir, then you send that poison right on top of it, then let's say they put down Goblin Gang or Skeleton Army, it's instantly going to die to that poison. And you'll see a good example right there of what I did with the poison, where I put it further away from the graveyard so that it clipped the princess and also clipped the Inferno Tower, giving me a whole bunch of value. And think about it, guys. Even if your graveyard doesn't do any damage, but you poison and you do that damage to the tower and you completely kill their Ewiz, right? You're getting the positive elixir trade there. That's 4 elixir for your poison, 4 elixir for their Ewiz. You completely destroyed it, and you're doing damage to the tower. Now, that's also essentially 5 elixir down the drain if your skeletons don't do any damage. But if we're trying to kind of find the silver lining, right, then think about that. You can really get good elixir value with just the poison. If they got the Ewiz, the support unit, and the tank like a Valkyrie or a Knight, maybe it won't finish off the tank, but you're getting even more value by doing damage to all 3 of those things rather than just the tower. Alright guys, this last one here is up against a Lava Hound deck. Now again, not the maybe most skilled opponent with the best deck. It is like a Lava Miner Jack deck, but he's running a whole ton of legendaries. I think it's only one card that's not a legendary, so it makes me wonder, maybe he was just trying to slap all the legendaries in there. But it works out okay, so let's kind of see how I play it. So you'll see that I immediately pull in that miner to the tower. A good thing that you can really take advantage of in this deck, any deck with Tornado really, is pulling units into the tower. And look at this unsuccessful graveyard there. See, it doesn't get a single hit off there. 1, 2, maybe 3, 4, 5, 6. It gets a few hits off, don't get me wrong. It actually worked out pretty well and got me some chip damage, but it could have been a lot better if I had had something there to tank for it. Now, it didn't kill his princess. It distracted the Ewiz a little bit, so it didn't get me a whole ton of value. But again, it worked out okay because of some, the graveyard there doing some damage to the Princess Tower. Now, he does have a level 8 Tesla, so that makes me wonder even more about, his skill level if he's running in classic challenges without cards maxed out. But I figured I'd slap this replay in here at the end anyway. Why don't we go ahead and jump through it in double elixir time, since it's not too exciting, and I just want to point out some of the decision making that I make. You'll see this time I send in the Dark Prince as a tank, I send in the Ice Wiz in the back, and then I use the graveyard. And even though let's go back and single here for a second, even though I, was sending in the graveyard and not getting too much value with it, I poisoned anyway to get the miner and to get the Night Witch, because that kills the Night Witch, that kills all her bats, it does some damage to the miner, it does some damage to the Princess Tower as well. So let's go ahead and skim through this again and see if we can find any other cool spots that I want to talk about with interactions. Here the princess is doing a good job of actually kind of shutting down all these skeletons, not that it would really matter too much. And you'll see almost every time I send in the graveyard, it's with something to tank for it. With this time it was the Baby Dragon and the Dark Prince and the Ice Wizard in back supporting, and it worked out really well. Now check out this defense here, guys. Look at this massive tornado synergy that I'm about to do here. With the Baby Dragon and the Ice Wizard pulled together and the Dark Prince there, his counter push, or his push, whatever you want to call it, just melted. I mean, even with like the tank, like the Lava Hound, the Baby Dragon and the Ice Wizard and the Princess Towers, I mean, that's a good amount of DPS, even for a really beefy unit like Lava Hound. And then it dies, and then the Tornado can pull all those pups in as well. So you can time it, use your Tornado right after the Lava Hound dies, or right as it's about to die, and then you can pull all those pups in. Get some massive value with that splash synergy that you got there. That is it for tonight, guys. Let's do all the stereotypical YouTube stuff. Like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I honestly really like hearing from you guys. I like hearing the feedback. I like hearing what you have to say. And I like answering your questions. So don't hesitate to leave a comment. Or if you have any questions about this deck, want me to cover another deck, or maybe you want to come on the channel as a guest and show off your deck, don't hesitate to let me know. Anyway, thanks so much for watching all the way to the end, guys. I really appreciate it. Have a good night.